Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. We are on episode 6 of our Isle of Man Sport podcast. Last time we had 4 lovely ladies in to do a feature on women in coaching. Today we have 2 gentlemen in who are going to talk to us about mentoring, and we may be lucky, we may even get a third one pop in at any minute now as well. So today, mentoring's a topic. We're going to explore what mentoring might mean to different people and what it might look like, see how it happens in different sports, and get a bit of an idea of some of the benefits that people are getting from mentoring programs. So with us today we've got Juan Watney and we have Andy Fox. So thanks for coming, guys.
No problem. Nice to be here, thank you.
Super duper. Before we start, just give us a very brief bit of background about yourselves. Just tell us who you are, what sort of sports you coach, and what your sort of general experience is.
Yeah, so my name's Juan Watney. I currently do some coach mentoring for the Football Association as part of their national FA Coach Mentor programme. My background is really quite varied. When I was a teenager, I worked for Manx Sport and Recreation as part of their community programme during the holidays between school and uni. Used to do a lot of cycling and did some work experience at British Cycling when I was at university. Came back, did a little bit of cycling, but I've sort of fallen into football coaching and now mentoring, and they balance each other out quite nicely.
Thanks, Stuart. And Andy, yourself?
Retired teacher, athlete, basically still running, but also been coaching on and off for longer than I care to think, probably on and off nearly 40 years. But particularly, I'd say the last 25 years. In that time, I've coached and tried to help many athletes, but also noticed that different coaches have different styles, and newer coaches sometimes can find that jump from maybe being an athlete or a parent to be a coach to be quite a major sort of chasm, actually. And so anything that we can do to help overcome that is really useful. Just on the technical side, I'm a level 3 UK athletics coach, and I'm hoping in the next few years to maybe be able to train as a coach educator, but that's still to be seen.
Excellent. So a whole host of experience there. We've got gentlemen from individual sport and one from team sport, so it'll be interesting to see if there's any parallels or any major differences, as a result of that as well. So that's fantastic. And Andy, a very long career in coaching as well. You've probably forgotten more than a lot of us know all put together.
Possibly so, but I would say that there's always new things to learn as well, and quite often you see things and think, well, isn't that actually what we were doing, blah blah blah, in the past. And that's the same in education. Things do come round again, but you don't have to have that kind of experience. Quite often I feel that motivation and enthusiasm can make up for a lot as well, and that's where younger coaches have an advantage. And there's lots of new ideas and new sort of input coming into sport all the time. So I think it's great to see that.
Fantastic. So we'll kick off then. Well, I suppose what is mentoring? What is mentoring in your experience in the sports that you do it? So who wants to kick off first?
So I'm really fortunate in that I was approached to be part of the Football Association's Coach Mentor programme back 5 years ago. There was a pilot scheme that we ran on the island where Paul Bryson was actually one of the pilot mentors when the scheme was ran nationally, and a year was done, and Paul did that over here and was still part of the team up until last year. And the FA recruited about 350 coach mentors to work nationally, and we've had a real formal exposure to some mentor training, which has been really good. Every year I'll go across to St George's with the other guys on Ireland who are part of the team, and we meet up nationally and get some different ideas, some formalised training, people from all walks of life. We had a really good speaker who was a hostage negotiator, and he came in and talked about the importance of building relationships. And then we've got people from academic backgrounds who work purely in universities and study mentoring, to sports coaches who are out practicing and are pros within the professional game and coaching the professional game and mentoring that environment. And we see all sorts, which is really good. We also delivered with Isle of Man Sport earlier on this year the Developing Coaches Through Mentoring course, which the FA have put together, which is like a 6-hour formalised training and looks at the importance of building rapport, developing relationships and observation and feedback skills. And I think they're the sort of 3 key areas of mentoring for me. And when I go in and work with a club or a coach, I think it's really important to develop that relationship, and then it's about actually what am I seeing and how do I feed that back, or what am I seeing and hearing. But my voice isn't any more valuable than the coaches. I'm just there as a sounding board, someone for them to sort of share their ideas with, to speak to. And you know what it's like when you are supported through that reflection process, just having someone else to talk to and bounce your ideas off really, can make a massive difference.
Yeah, I'd sort of support very much the idea that relationships are very, very important. The relationship between the coach and the athlete, also between depending on the age of the athlete, the coach and the parent, and then also between coaches, because dependent on age of athlete, they can be involved in a number of different aspects of athletics. And so different coaches need to support each other and also give space for each other as well, because that athlete can't be expected to do something 100% of the time if they're still dabbling with the idea that they might be this or they might be that. With older athletes it's probably a little bit easier, but I would say that our programme is very much of a homemade programme. It's based upon individuals who are very experienced, such as myself and John Whitlow being the mentors, and we're working with individuals who are level 1 coaches or newly qualified level 2 coaches in athletics, but not feeling confident enough to take a group or individuals fully by themselves at this stage. Within that, we've identified areas such as planning programs, such as the practicalities of how you run a session, also looking at nutrition, looking at psychology, etc., to try and help the athlete, and also in our coaches' meetings, trying to bring together different ideas and philosophies that coaches can look at, learn from, and then maybe decide to use that towards their philosophy and how they're going to work with an athlete. It is a bit different perhaps to football, because obviously we're working with perhaps 2 or 3 individuals, or maybe 6 or 7. Perhaps if you've got a bigger group, maybe 13 or 14, you're not looking at possibly a squad of 30 or something like that with one coach. So it's a slightly different area. Sometimes it might even be a one-to-one process as well. I think relationships are very, very important in both, really.
How do you identify coaches who might be willing to be part of your mentor process? You talked about being pro level 2.
That's a good point. I mean, we're working within our club, Manx Harriers, and we desperately need more coaches. So actually, it's not very difficult to identify because it's the coaches that we have, and it's the coaches who've made it clear that they don't want to remain a level 1 coach. They want to become a level 2 coach, and so they become responsible for a group or an individual. A level 1 coach has to work under the auspices of a level 2 or level 3 coach. So it's those individuals who've said, I'm ready and I want to make that move. But of course, getting the qualification is one thing, which isn't easy, by the way. It involves 4 trips to the UK for to gain your qualification. But even at that stage, it's then being ready and able to actually take a group or a group of individuals on.
And does the qualification come with sort of an in-situ ongoing support, or are you doing that in-house and that's through your mentor programme?
Yeah, basically we're doing that in-house.
That's fantastic.
I mean, if you were in the UK, I think you would have more support. Basically because, I mean, when I was living in the UK, which is going back a long time now, But I was in a coach in North Wales. I was an athlete in a club in North Wales, and I did a bit of coaching. This is when I was quite young, so it's late teens, early 20s. We came under Malcolm Arnold, who was the Welsh national coach at the time. So he would come up and run courses. We would go to the courses, and then we would go to the local hub in North Wales for top-ups and hear from other coaches, etc., etc. We haven't got that on the Isle of Man. We're a little bit stuck on our own. Potentially, we're connected with the Northwestern structure, but obviously it's not so easy to get across to certain events, etc. So basically, people who've got that bit of expertise, what we're trying to do is ensure that you can get that on island through our own expertise and people in our own club.
So it's very much about working together, and I think the common theme that seemed to come across as well was developing confidence in people, and helping people realise that they're far more capable than they give themselves credit for. Yes. In terms of getting out there and coaching. Yeah. The coach is often seen as the fountain of all knowledge, but there's not a coach out there who knows everything.
It's a lonely place, isn't it, being in charge of a team or an athlete? It's a very, very lonely place.
It can be, because you're expected to know things, and yes, you do. You've got a vast amount, perhaps, of experience, maybe not so much experience, but lots of ideas. But the point is that the individual athlete or football or whatever it might be, they want to know now what they should be doing to overcome this issue or problem that they have. And it may well be that you can find the answer quickly, but sometimes you can't. So it's something you have to work at. But so long as the individual has agreed to certain parameters and rules, as to how the program and how the relationship will work, then I think you can always find that way through. But that's quite an important thing to have at the start. This is how the program will work, and to have discussed that and talked it through with the individual. Yeah,
we've had a similar sort of process about how it might look. The coach mentor program for the FA has changed drastically in 6 years. In those first couple of years, it was quite prescriptive. It was very formal. You would go in, the club would identify a coach to work with. You could work with 2 coaches in 2 clubs at one time, and that was it. And you would go in and do a needs analysis, a session observation, identify some learning outcomes for the coach, and then work towards those. It was much more of a formal, supported learning structure, I think, which fell much closer alongside to the coach-ed pathway than maybe the mentor relationship. In that time, the program's massively diversified, and we do all sorts of work now. We work with the league. I still do that coach work with identified coaches over a set period of time, but go in and work with the clubs. Had a really positive experience at a couple of clubs, helping them come up with their philosophy and just asking some questions to get them to think. And there's some really, really good football clubs on the Isle of Man. One thing, talking about confidence, you mentioned before, Trevor, the FA, because they are a sort of big organisation, do the research. So in, not last season just gone, but the season before, they completed a study of all the mentees, and 68% of mentees that were worked with reported an increased motivation to continue, and that was one of the problems. We didn't identify in football that we were struggling for coaches. We identified that we were losing coaches from the game. They were coming in, doing a couple of years and going away again. So the mentor program is there to help retain coaches and increase the standard. And then that sort of goes on to, there was a 99% feedback of an improved player environment and experience, and that's what we're there for. So if we can improve the standard of coaching and the coaches are more motivated and stay, then the players are going to get a better experience. Those players are going to stay in the game, and they're going to be, I believe, they're going to live in our society. We're really lucky in the Isle of Man that people do come back and don't move away because of some of the barriers that we face. Actually, if you flip that on its head, it's a real positive, because the kids we work with are going to stay here, and they're going to be the pub landlord and the shopkeeper and the doctor and my kid's teacher, maybe, for instance. So actually, if they have a positive experience and we can help them develop into great human beings through helping their coach establish himself and be good, I think we're doing everyone a favour. That's sort of the way I see it.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think that's very good, the sort of holistic view. You know, all coaches are actually educators to a degree. They're educating the people who they're coaching, and if you're mentoring, you're educating the coaches who are coming to you, but also you're learning from them as well. So I think it's an all holistic and all-round view that we're looking at here. And you know, coaching, whilst it does a great deal in a particular sport to help hopefully an individual or team go on and become so much better than they might have been, so much better than they might have even believed they could be. On the other hand, you learn an awful lot more as well about yourself and about life, and I think
Massively.
you know, that's really important. I mean, we both come from an educational background, so we may be giving a bit more of a spin in that way than other people would. But you know, I often remember my mum, who worked in sort of youth work, basically as a scout leader and a Cub Scout leader. And I mean, she was adamant that, you know, she was as much a teacher as I was a teacher, having qualified, because basically she spent her life doing that sort of work. And, you know, who was I to argue with us? That's very much true, isn't it? You know?
I thought it was really interesting what you said there, Andy, around the learning, not just the mentee learning from you as a mentor, but you as a mentor learning from the mentee, and it being a two-way process. I think quite commonly there can be a feeling that if someone's a level 3 or a level 4 coach, then what can they learn from someone who might be a level 1 or a level 2? But I don't think anything could be as black and white or as simple as that, really. And everyone's got the capacity to take something from anyone and improve how they practice their coaching.
Yeah, and I think you can see an individual working with another group of individuals, so coach working with athletes, or mentor working with mentees, and you can look at that and see what's happening. And you know, you might be very, very well qualified, you may know an awful lot, but the way that person puts something across, you know, you can learn from simply that. You know, you're looking for people who are interested in people and can get across ideas, aren't you? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about knowledge and truth, and this sort of thirst for who's got the best session plans and who's the best trainer and coach, actually what's right for me isn't right for Andy, and what's right for Andy isn't right for you, Trevor. And I think that's one of the biggest skills of mentoring, is recognising each person's environment and situation. And actually what I've gone through to get to where I am as a coach isn't what some of the guys I'm working with is going through. So they are much more knowledgeable about their situation than I am. I've got different experiences to them, and that's all we can talk about. And when I talked before about observation and feedback, it's really important to me that there's no judgment coming along with that. It's just, I'm telling them what I see in my truth through my eyes, but that isn't necessarily what they're going to see, and it might not be. It might be what they wanted. So I could have an observation about their session or a piece of their practice and say, oh, I saw this. And they might say, oh, well, no, I didn't see that. I saw it this way. And that's absolutely okay. And it might be, they go, do you know what? That is exactly it. You've hit the nail on the head. I couldn't see it because I was in it, and I just needed someone on the outside to sort of see that for me. But no, I really don't. I don't see it as a hierarchical structure thing at all. I think I've got different experiences and I've seen different things, but it's not that I know more than them by any stretch.
Fantastic. So you're going to add something to that, Andy?
Yeah, I was going to. I think back to when I was, shall we say, probably about 20 years ago, coming more into coaching full-time almost, if that's the way to put it, rather than just dabbling in it a bit and ensuring that there was a bit of training going on at the club, but actually trying to coach individuals far, you know, to far greater degree. And I think there were two coaches that I learnt an awful lot from. And I'm not they didn't mentor me, but they were always there if I sent them an email or contacted them to find out a little bit more by phone, or if we met at a coaching seminar or whatever. One guy was Jeremy Harries, who was a middle distance, long distance coach. Coached people like Helen Clitheroe, John Nuttall, people like that, individuals that ran for GB and actually won medals in European and Commonwealth Championships, things like this. So my area, and a really great coach, and someone I learned an awful lot from. And you're going to laugh now. The other guy who I learned so much from was Merrick Bousfield,
right?
Who was a throws coach.
I remember Merrick.
And I brought Merrick over here to do coaching because we didn't have any throws coaches at the time. And I don't know, it'd be interesting to ask John Whitlow, in the early days of his coaching, did he learn from Merrick? Because Merrick came over and ran sessions here for athletes, but also for coaches. And used to stay with me in our house, and I learnt so much from talking about coaching with Merrick. There's a whole new world of athletics I didn't even know existed behind the hammer cage. Athletics matches, and you just learn so much from different people. And my view is that there's so many people out there in coaching, in athletics, and probably other sports as well. Yeah. And what you're trying to do is to help those individuals find their way, their niche, their way of doing it. And if you can do that, then hopefully they'll then go on and gain that confidence, become that great coach that we need. And the two examples there, Jeremy, you'd expect him to be someone who would influence me. But Merrick, you wouldn't have expected that at all. But I learned so much from both of them, but I would say particularly Merrick, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's, again, I think we've spoke about it in previous podcasts and other events, the benefit from networking with coaches within your sport, within your event group, outside of your event group in athletics, but then also outside of your sport as well, and going and looking at how people do it in gymnastics or football or swimming or whatever it might be. I think sometimes we can be blinkered by our own sport, can't we, and see other things elsewhere.
And it's really interesting listening to you there, Andy. You talk about what you learned from Merrick. Did you say you stayed at your house?
Yes.
So I would guarantee, or I'd be very confident, that lots of that learning was over the dinner table or with a glass of wine, not at the trackside.
Yeah, it was.
And I think that's a big change to coach education. It's okay to be away from the pitch, away from the track. It's okay to go and sit. We meet in Costa quite a lot, or the Whitestone in Ballasalla if needs be. And I think that's a big change in coach ed.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And whilst we've been doing a bit of that as formal meeting, well, not really formal, but meetings, I think you're right. When you're sat, over the dinner table, you're talking about things in a social sort of atmosphere. That's when you can learn an awful lot, actually.
Absolutely. I mean, another thing to add there as well, mentoring programs exist now. They're quite in vogue, you might say.
Yeah.
But like you say, mentoring is nothing new. It's always been taking place. It's perhaps in the past, as you said before there, Andy, it's just been in a less formal setting. And sometimes the less formal settings can lend themselves to some fantastic ideas and learning.
Yeah, I'd agree wholeheartedly with that. And I feel, within athletics at the moment, it's an area that we have got to develop, because there isn't a programme on the Isle of Man that we can kind of slot into and use, or not one that I'm aware of anyway. And I believe that, we've got some very, very interesting and good young coaches who want to come forward and do more. So we've got to work with them, because our numbers are much, much smaller than in football. So, it's not a case of we need to retain 60% or 70%. We've got to try and retain all of them and then try and bring in more as well, because, our numbers are less than we would like. Really.
We're really lucky. Between the four mentors operating on the island, we worked in 6 clubs last year, but ran some different events, and we think actually we touched or sort of worked with 124 coaches within the grassroots football game on the island, I think, which is massive impacts on the grassroots game. And we're in our 5th year, we're in our 6th season now. If we can reproduce those numbers year in, year out, I think we are going to get that retention of coaches, and then a higher standard off the back of it.
Yeah.
Super.
So you can see the difference, because we're within our club, we're working with about 18 to 20 coaches and trying to develop as many of those as far as they would like to go. And it's something that we have tried very hard to work on, that, you know, we've got a sort of structure for our athletes and how they would work through our sort of pathways, but we're also trying to do similar with our coaches, so that they would work through the pathways as well, to the degree that they would like to reach.
How have you found that, marrying up the two processes? Because part of the mentor programme in football is to support coaches who are going through their formal education pathway, but then a big part of it, in my mind, the bigger part of it is to do the other stuff the guys who aren't in formalised learning. For too long, we've said, we're the font of all knowledge, we're going to run these courses, you come to us and we're going to give you knowledge. And in reality, that's not the way it is. You know, we're working with grassroots coaches who sacrifice so much, as my wife will tell you, to go out and support football. Actually, we should be going to them, supporting them at their level where they're working. And there's a very definite divide between the mentor programme and formalised coach education. As much as there's an overlap, they're really two separate things.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for us it's similar, because the formalised education programme is, if we can get a coach educator from the UK to come over here, which is we've managed to do for a level 1 course in the last 12 months. But for level 2, we're struggling to get any sort of agreement that they would come over here. So our guys are having to go away to do the level 2 course. So really, that's happening sort of in isolation, really.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is to provide that extra bit of information, stroke, inspiration, stroke, motivation, if that's the way to put it, through our programme. You know, so I'm working with 3 coaches, John's working with 2. That's where we are at the minute. We've got other coaches who might work with a few as well. But what I would say is that all coaches are able to come to our meetings, and in those meetings everyone is important, and everyone's point of view is important, and everyone's development as far as they wish to take it is important, just like it would be for an athlete coming to a session.
So we're coming towards the sort of end of the podcast now, guys. So if you had a top tip for someone who is looking to get into mentoring, or a club or a sport where trying to put together a mentoring program, what would it be?
I'm going to sound really, really corporate, but I think the Developing Coaches Through Mentoring course that we ran in conjunction with yourself last year, Trevor, was really, really good. And we talked a little bit tonight about getting advice and feedback and ideas from other coaches. We used to do that mentoring adults course just within football, and it was good, but you ended up with very similar experiences. What I really enjoyed about the course we ran here at the Sports Institute last year or earlier on this year was the variety of experiences. So that my advice would be, keep your eyes open for when that's advertised, and book on that course. It's only is it 6 hours, 2 evenings?
Yeah.
And so we'll do it over with conjunction with yourselves.
So you're going to be running that again, are you?
We will be running that again.
Okay, so watch
year.
this space, guys. And how about you, Andy?
Well, I'd agree with that maybe that would be a good place to start and a good place to help. But the other thing I would say is, from our experience, it's trying to find the individuals who want to develop and progress in their coaching, and trying to match them up with the person who has the expertise and might be able to help, and for both parties to be willing to learn and take it forward.
Super, thank you very much. And I suppose my top tip, and I'll give it an unashamed plug as well, is to get involved with, to get out there and network and meet other coaches. And at the minute, the Isle of Man Sport Aid Academy has kicked off again for another cohort for the next 2 years. And there'll be monthly workshops which any coach who's qualified and DBS checked can come along to. So there's a whole plethora of learning taking place there, from the holistic side of preparing athletes, whether it be the physical side, the mental side, the nutritional side, So we don't get into the technicalities of how to kick a football or how to shoot a basket in basketball. It's much more around the generic needs of the athlete. So it basically transcends all sports. It's been a great source of information for me over the last number of years. We've had a good number of coaches coming and going and benefiting from that learning. Claire Batty, who was in our last podcast from netball, can't rave enough about it. She's found it a massive help to her and how she's developing the sport of netball, and in actual fact she's looking at trying to provide some sort of academy type system within netball itself so it can echo all of those key messages even further. But I think bringing people together is, you know, bringing coaches together and making new coaching friends is a great way to have those informal chats where you can really pick each other's brains and learn even more.
I'd agree with that, Trev. I've been to a number of those over the years, and I went to the one last Friday, and I thought it was a great start. I think the athletes who were there, the young athletes, really enjoyed it. And you know, you could say, well, I've been there before and I've done all this, so why did I bother going? Well, because you could learn something, and I learned quite a lot that evening, so it was good.
Fantastic.
It's that mix of formalised learning and informal sort of relationships and just information gathering from different sources. No, couldn't echo those words enough. I've been a few times and it's always been really, really valuable.
Thank you very much. So if any listeners are interested in getting involved, you just need to contact me on trevor.christian@gov.im or give me a call on 688 590. So that pretty much wraps up our podcast today, guys. So really, really, really appreciate you guys coming in and giving up more of your voluntary time, because you ain't getting paid, and speaking with us today. So it's been really good to get your takes on mentoring, and hopefully it might inspire a few people out there to get into mentoring as a mentee or a mentor themselves. Yeah, so thank you very much indeed, gents.
Cheers, Trevor.
Cheers, Trevor. Thank you very much.
And thank you for listening, folks. So again, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to give me a call, 688 590. And equally, get onto the Isle of Man Sport Facebook group, the Coaches Forum on Facebook. So you just check it out, go onto Facebook, type in Isle of Man Sport Coaches Forum, and there's about 350 members on there, all sharing lots of really good information. Keep up to date with the latest course information, and if you've got a coaching question, just get on there and ask it. Use the collective brain of the forum, and we can all help each other out. Thank you very much, folks. Good night.